little while back, to be accurate about 7 months ago, I posted something on my Facebook page asking for which action game I should play to review. I've played and finished all of them, and thought all of them could be potentially fun review. I decided to go with Bayonetta first, because I did Devil May Cry as a precursor to god-awful Devil May Cry 2. And playing it again, I forgot how damn fun Bayonetta is. When it comes down to it, Bayonetta is a mix of Devil May Cry and God of War. Both games are equally as good, but when you put them both together, you get an action game full of quick time events and a main character that's quick on the retort. I suppose I should do what I normally do and start with the story. You play as a witch named Bayonetta, who, of course, has a bit of amnesia. She encounters a giant battle against angelic foes, and subsequently gets info that one of the eyes of the world is in a city known as Vigrid. Bayonetta doesn't know what these eyes are, but decides that it's probably important for her to go find them. So she heads on out, trying to outrun the bird-like angels, who seem to be testing her in one way or another. There's quite a cast of characters in the game, and each enjoys a fairly lengthy personality progression. Enzo is one of the first guys you meet, and he seems to have connections to some mob. He seems to be paid simply for handing Bayonetta information, although he's not entirely sure what she is. You don't see him often, mostly in the beginning and end of the game. I can admit that in his first encounter, in the prologue chapter of the game, it's pretty funny to watch, as Enzo sees things getting destroyed and has no freaking clue what's going on. He almost gets his balls smashed by a tombstone. Another character is Rodan. He doesn't appear often, but is more important because he runs the Gates of Hell bar. Entering this bar by any of the red portals will allow you to use the halos earned from killing angelic creatures to purchase helpful items, skills, and weapons, not unlike Devil May Cry. You can also access this bar in an intermission between stages. Next is Jean, who seems to know who Bayonetta truly is, but fights her repeatedly regardless. She becomes an integral character in regards to the plot. There's also Luca, who isn't as involved in the plot as Jean, but still plays an important role because of his constant encounters with Bayonetta. Finally, there's Cereza, who's this little girl running around the city of Vigrid. She also gets to become intertwined in the plot, and is the only regular human able to see Bayonetta. Maybe I should explain that. Bayonetta is a witch, and as so, exists on a different plane than the regular human population. With this, you can notice that when walking around the streets of Vigrid, you'll see that the people are walking around completely oblivious to Bayonetta's presence. They are also shown in a clear image to signify that they aren't on the same worldly plane as the main protagonist. If you break any objects or shoot your guns around them, they will react though. They'll look around completely stumped on what the hell is going on and usually will start running away. It's actually kind of funny, and I wish a bit more would have gone into this. Maybe a few more levels could have been made to show off this effect. Oh well. Bayonetta does have the ability to switch between planes as she pleases. This isn't something that you can control in the game though. It happens automatically during cutscenes, depending on the events in the story. There is a point in the game where Bayonetta needs to protect Cereza. So since Bayonetta is on the regular human plane, the enemies show up as the clear blobs. You can tell a lot of detail went into the story, because you're going to be constantly seeing Bayonetta casting spells that interact with characters like Luca and Cereza. Yet I can't get too involved with it since it's a huge part of the game. At least now you know the basics though. So let's move on to the gameplay. As I've mentioned before, the game is a cross between Devil May Cry and God of War. To be precise, the combat engine is just as frenzied and action-packed as Devil May Cry, but it takes the quick-time events of God of War and implements those in the boss battles and some cutscenes. I also have to point out that the game is incredibly smooth compared to the two games I keep saying it takes after. But then again, that could potentially be fancier hardware. Either way, the game runs great. As for progression, you'll walk across a mainly linear path, and eventually encounter groups of angels taking the forms of various creatures, but mainly birds. You'll also encounter some really freaking ugly creatures like the bosses of the game. In typical style, they are massive in size. Anyway, I'm straying away from what I was trying to get to, so time to get back on track. Where the hell was I anyway? Oh yeah, the combat. So you're just tasked with eliminating the enemy forces, and all while this is happening, you'll notice that a counter on the top right of the screen calls the combat encounter a verse. The game takes a lyrical approach to the game, where each encounter acts like a verse in a song. Once you defeat all of your enemies, you are given a score based on your effectiveness in combat. If you can manage to grab a high combo and elude all damage, you can earn the coveted pure platinum medal, which basically just states that you kicked ass. You can get your scores uploaded to an online leaderboard, but I never bothered with it. If you're competitive though, by all means, take advantage of this feature. So yeah, combat is your standard fare, but there's plenty of things that help make it more unique. For one, Bayonetta keeps guns equipped on her shoes. Yeah, you heard that right. With this mechanic, you can do some pretty interesting combo attacks. Square allows Bayonetta to shoot her guns regularly, but in the status screen you can choose to change what weapons Bayonetta has on her hands and feet. I usually keep the sword and shotgun combo, because I found it to work well. To further elaborate on the controls, triangle uses the weapon equipped in her hands, and circle uses the weapon mounted on her feet. Some weapons can get equipped in both slots, and others are restricted to solely one limb. Pun intended. Get it? Feet, solely... Okay, I'll stop. You will earn new weapons, but they can be tricky to grab. In order to unlock one, you need to come across a record. Sometimes you will find the whole thing after a battle, and other times you'll be granted a piece of it and will need to assemble them all. Once a record is fully assembled, just go meet Rodon in the Gates of Hell, and he'll enter the evil underworld. Play the record to lure out some beast, kill it, and somehow make it into a weapon that Bayonetta can use. I'm not making this up, by the way. These weapons range from swords to guns to even whips. There's a pretty lengthy tutorial stage to teach you all of the mechanics. In fact, it forces you to get adept at using witch time, which is essentially bullet time when you counter certain attacks. If you can evade right when the enemy strikes, most of the times it will activate this witch time for a few seconds. During it, you can normally dish out considerable damage. If you want to practice your combos without the fear of getting hit, you can utilize the loading screens. During these, all of the available combos are shown on the right side of the screen, along with the number of times you perform them. You can press select here to stay here even after the loading of the next section completes, so it's a great place to practice the more intricate maneuvers. Being a witch, Bayonetta has access to a few other tools to defeat the Heavenly Soldiers. Many of these tools use her hair as a weapon. More on that in a bit. First, I want to talk about the magic meter and the torture attacks. Basically, as you fight the enemies and avoid damage, you'll see those orbs that are directly underneath your life bar to light up. If you get hit, some of them will extinguish. These orbs are similar to Dante's Devil Trigger. Once you reach a certain amount, you can press triangle and circle when prompted to execute a torture attack. It will often fully kill the weaker enemies, but for stronger ones, you'll deal a massive amount of damage. In order to gain bonus points in Halos, you'll see a quick time event pop up. All you have to do is follow the instructions. These torture attacks are specific to the enemy you're attacking, so if you can memorize which quick time event is associated with every enemy, you can get a head start on the button mashing. You also have the ability to use alchemy to forge lollipops. Again, I'm not kidding. As you're playing, enemies and objects will drop one of 3 alchemic ingredients, which are conveniently color-coded for you. By entering the alchemy screen, you can concoct health items, magic items, or even an item that does tremendous damage against the holy enemy forces. This isn't something that's required, but it does help when you have the ingredients to at least make the better health lollipops. Bayonetta can also use artifacts that she purchases from Rodon. These things are insanely expensive though, and you'll have to save up for a few levels to purchase one. However, they do things such as automatically engaging witch time when attacked, to allowing you to nullify damage if you press a button at the exact right moment. You can only equip 2 at a time, so you can choose the 2 that will suit your playstyle the best. Now let's move on to the hair. Bayonetta's hair is the focus point on many of her attacks, and her costume is also made from it. So some of her more powerful attacks force Bayonetta to drop her suit and instead project her hair as a weapon. These range from your powerful combo ending attacks, where the hair takes the form of a giant shoe to stomp or kick the enemy, to summoning rituals during the climax of a boss fight. Yes, it's literally called a climax. And yes, that's the kind of humor that Bayonetta has. You'll notice just how much her mind is in the gutter. And no, there's never any nudity where Bayonetta summons things with her hair. Although she's very ready to tease everyone a bit, especially when talking to various characters, and especially for the interactions with Luca. Anyway, I'm branching off again. When you activate the button presses for the climax, a small cutscene will play where Bayonetta does a little dance and summons a demonic creature made of hair. This creature will deal a bit of damage, just like a torture attack, and then deal the killing blow. Sometimes you'll be able to summon the thing just to deal a ton of damage to whittle down the effectiveness of the larger bosses though, so a climax isn't always the finale of the battle. This brings me to one of the few complaints I have about the game, although it is extremely minor. During some of the cutscenes, the action is paced so quickly that you can't understand what the hell is going on. Sure, you get the gist of it, but I would rather watch a fluid cutscene than a highly fragmented one like they're trying to put an hour's worth of a beating into 5 seconds. Sure, you understand what's happening, but not exactly how. Again, it's not a huge deal, but something worth mentioning. So back to the gameplay. Bayonetta also gets the ability to walk along walls when the moon is out. You'll know that when this is possible when there's a blue shadow underneath Bayonetta. When this occurs, you'll be able to leap towards a wall and walk along it. This is incredibly fun, and there are a few bosses revolving around this mechanic. I wish there was more gameplay based around this, but either way, it's fun to use. The only catch to this is that in some of the more chaotic areas, it can be a bit challenging to orient yourself in which direction you need to be facing in. Regardless, this is a really fun mechanic. In fact, the full atmosphere of the game is fantastic. The town of Vigrid feels like a nice remote village that is blessed with heaven's graces. Yet, you actually get to see the town when heaven and hell start fighting over it. You'll find out that Bayonetta really attacks the angels because they are after her. And you'll eventually find out that she's not exactly either good or evil, but more neutral. Her full background isn't disclosed near the end of the game, and then the reasons why you're fighting heavenly bodies are understood. So there's quite a bit to slay in the game, and in addition, you have portals that lead to a place called Alfheim. This acts like the challenge sections of the game. Entering this portal gives you a challenge, such as kill enemies while under witch time, or kill all enemies within a time limit. While the challenges themselves aren't very hard, what makes these a bit more difficult is that you lose your standard life meter. Instead, you can only take a small number of hits, regardless on how much damage they would normally do. If you fail, you can always try again, as you can leave whenever you wish. The prizes for these range between various power-ups, such as the standard hard and magic pieces. You know, standard action material. In addition, after a chapter is completed, you move on to a game that mimics the old-style carnival shooters. You use special bullets that you acquire through the stage at random, although you'll always start with about 6 of them on minimum. By shooting various targets, you'll earn points that can be swapped into either items if you're good enough, or standard halos to purchase items later. It's a fun, yet short diversion to the rest of the game, and really does feel like an end-of-level bonus. If you get bored and want to know a bit more about the lore of the world, you can always view the journal entries that you pick up during the game. They're extremely detailed and will give you info on the characters, enemies, and the environment as a whole. They're definitely a great read if you want to learn all you can about the world of Bayonetta. Being that Sega produced the game, there are several references to prior Sega games. Let's start with the obvious. You know those halos look like rings from Sonic. But in addition to that, there's a short reference to Fantasy Zone, and one whole level is played out exactly like Space Harrier. Did I mention that Bayonetta is literally riding a missile at this point? Pretty cool. In fact, that's not the only standout level. There's also a stage where Bayonetta is driving a motorcycle across a lengthy road, trying to get into a military base. The stage is pretty lengthy, but honestly, it just feels out of place. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about it that I just don't like. I just can't place my finger on it. Maybe it's just the fact that you're zooming around, holding down square to shoot enemies and dodging the larger ones. I don't know. Shit, I never mentioned the cutscene style. They play out both in regular movie fashion, and also like there are slides on a movie reel. I'm a bit confused on why they alternate this way. Maybe the developers were going for something completely different. Regardless, the style does work, so it's not something that you can really complain about. It gets the story across, and that's all that matters. I think it's time to wrap up this review. I've been droning on and on about the game, and I think I've said all that needs to be said. If you're a fan of action games, this is a must-play. You get about 10 hours out of a single playthrough, and there's no freaking way that you can unlock all skills, weapons, and such in just one time. So you're going to want to play a second time to get everything. And with the New Game Plus on the next difficulty, I can assure you that you will be challenged. Give this one a shot if you have the means, because it's one of the best action games I've ever played. Final score? 10 out of 10. Yep, we're going perfect on this one. This is Reaper. As always, facebook.com/ReapersViews. Happy fragging.
All done? Well, let me give you back your toy then. Bugger. And I didn't make any time for pillow talk.